Okay, if everybody could have their seats, we'll make a start. Okay, let's jump in. I think this morning we don't have our 4 RAB members online. There are various other issues that are going on that need to be dealt with. But thank you again for coming to the function last night. It was good to have some more intense informal discussions on a number of topics. And so this morning, excuse me, this morning our plan is to just continue the informal discussions of yesterday and try and focus down on some of the more interesting topics that you discussed yesterday, but also last night. And if there's anything else you've thought of that you would like the Secretariat to take into consideration over the next year or two in particular. So as a first topic, I would like to go back to the Fishery Independent Setline Survey presentation. And so could we just have the presentation from Kayla back up on the screen, please? I think it's paper 6 from memory. 7. Okay. Okay, so there was a question, Lando in particular, last night, just about the budget numbers that were presented, and I just wanted to bring those up on the screen and just discuss them to get clarification. So can you remember, was it this slide that you were referring to in our discussions last night? Okay, and so I think you had, I see, yeah, okay, now I can see exactly what you were talking about. So Lando last night was just asking like what the difference was in what we budgeted versus actuals. And so what these numbers are the 24 FIS, where we had Pacific halibut sales of 2.1 million. And in 2025, Pacific halibut sales of 2.15 million. And so that's just halibut, correct? I'm just looking at the team to get confirmation. And so the question was, why is it only $100,000 or $55,000 difference? And that's primarily due to the design, but also the catch rates and the various locations that we fished in. But was there a more specific question that you would like the team to answer, Lando, or myself?
I just heard 2 different numbers, that this generated 2.6 million and then this said 2.1. So I was just confused about where the other $500,000 came from.
Sure. So what I will do is see if I can stop sharing here. Do you remember how to?
Yep. Where's that other $500,000? And also,
Okay, so what I have up on the screen, and I'm going to try and expand that a little bit. And so this is actually our accounting software. We have, about 5 years ago, turned a massive corner with our internal governance and efficiency with our accounting program. We moved from a software called Microsoft Dynamics GP to something more attuned to our budgeting needs, and it's called APLOS. What this allows us to do is just to bring up for any of the managers, any of the fund managers, to go in and in real time bring up our accounts. And so this is a live view as of right now into our accounting software. The report that I've brought up on screen is our year-to-date budget for last fiscal year. And so that relates to the numbers that we were just talking about from the FIS. I don't know if I can actually zoom in any more. If the team online is able to, there we go. Don't worry about that. Okay, so I have just zoomed into the budget, and so this is, as I said, this is FY 2025, so starting October to the end of September 2025. We have our annual budget and our actuals. And so the amount that we were talking about, we only budgeted and expected $1.3 million in total fish sales. So that's Pacific halibut and bycatch. And so our realized income was $2.9 million. So 218% of what we budgeted. And that was due for the reasons that we've already discussed yesterday in terms of catch rates, fish price, and also the fecundity study, which was not in the initial budget. And so this number here is based on the projections, the tool that's developed, and we expected an income of just over 1.3 million. But with all of those positives in the FIS in 2025, the total income was $2.87 million. And so when we look at all of the income, the 387 in terms of what was budgeted here is what the US gave us prior to the budget being readopted in January of 2025. And so we actually go in and readopt it. And we knew that number. They'd already given it to us. After the budget was adopted, Canada gave us $300,000 as well. And that's why you see that difference there from the contracting parties. And so that additional $300,000 plus the additional, I should actually put in the difference there, but it'll get a bit small. What's that? 1.5 roughly $1 million extra. So that was the income. And the number that you saw in the FIS presentation was the Pacific halibut actuals. And so it doesn't include all the other incomes that we're talking about there and the additional bycatch revenue. Then going down to the bottom here, you can see that we budgeted without the fecundity study, $2.647 million for the FIS for this calendar year. It's actually for the fiscal year, but just talking about the implications of this year's survey. The actual expenses were slightly more, 2.884, and that is because we added in part of the fecundity study costs, the vessel costs and things like that. And so that's why you see a slight increase there. You will also see where are we? Let me just find there was one other. So the vessel expenses in terms of gear loss, team, just rattle off if you can remember anything else that's in the vessel expense category that was additional this year. Nope, that's all right. And then we also had the maintenance and utilities, and this is because the commission didn't budget for the servicing of the water profilers, but we went ahead and did that this year. And so that's why you see $27,000 difference there. And so what that all means is that we went into 2025 with an adopted budget for the Fishery Independent Setline Survey of minus $905,000. The commission actively decided to go revenue negative for it so that we could go and sample more and collect the data for the stock assessment and the like. The assumption there was that we were going to get some money from Canada, which we did, so $300,000 off that. So it went down to $600,000 negative, and then with the additional fish revenue. And what that meant is that we actually came in revenue positive of $712,000. And as I said, that's going to be used partially for 2026 FIS, and then also partially to build a reserve so that we don't have this concern, hopefully moving forward. So every year we're going to try and put a couple $100,000 into that reserve and build it up to something more substantial. And we have an aspirational goal there of $2 million. So that's it in a nutshell. Is there any more questions about sort of FIS budgeting? Count numbers. Kayla, can you just, in terms of fish sales here, can you just remind me, so we have obviously Pacific halibut, we have bycatch, but that also includes the portions that would go to ADF&G and vessels. And that comes in as an expense, and that's what that would actually be, part of that, the vessel expenses.
Yeah, the vessel expenses includes the vessel revenue share,
Great.
as well as, yeah, the ADF&G portion.
Cool.
Yeah, and gear replacements as well are in vessel expenses.
Yeah. So what's nice to see here as well is that we budgeted $1.1 million for the vessel contracts, and even including part of the fecundity study vessel contract, the bids came in on target, which is good. So essentially it came in under budget because we added an extra vessel contract for the fecundity study in there. So that was great from all of the vessel captains and owners who bid on the survey this year. It's the first time I've recall it happening. And look, again, I know there's a lot of talk about budgeting. There's a lot of talk about accountability, transparency. And as I said, we really turned a corner about 5-6 years ago with our accounting, how we account for the activities of the FIS. Previously, it was under budgeted, and the contracting party contributions were just covering that gap. We now have an incredibly accurate accounting of all of our expenses and all of our income, down to the point where we can jump into any of these, drill down on them. It's not going to work now just because I'm trying to do it. And you can go down and look to individual payments, individual vessels. We can then go in, and there is an AI tool now linked with our accounting software that will allow us to fully scrutinize and start to project various trends associated with our expenses. So it's fantastic. As I said, of course, it's not going to work now. All right, I'm going to give up on it. So any final questions about the financial side of the survey? No? Okay. Well, let me get out of this then. How do I? Perfect. Okay, if we could just bring up the agenda again, please. And I'm just going to pass to Giuseppe to see if there's any the topics that were discussed yesterday that we need to flesh out a little bit more, and then also if there are any new topics. Thanks, Giuseppe.
Great. Thank you, Dave. So we have now about an hour to continue our discussion on any topics that you feel that are necessary to go further into or bring up new issues. Just as a recap, yesterday I thought we had a really interesting discussion, and just as a recap, we covered several issues. We covered SAM fleas, reporting issues. We also talked about the potential effects of trawling on SAM flea occurrence. In relation to trawling, we also talked about the potential effects of trawling on directed fishing activities. That was a comment that Kevin brought up. We also discussed maturity at younger ages that we're seeing for female Pacific halibut. We also discussed a little bit about the fecundity studies that are coming up and their importance. There was also a mention of deck sorting requirements in the trawl fishery in the direction of maybe rethinking trawl mortality. I think that's pretty much what we covered yesterday. So now the floor is open again for discussion of any new topics. There's maybe a few things that we could follow up on, but I'll let the RAB members speak up and suggest any other topics for discussion, or if they want to bring up any particular issue. Yeah, sure.
It's been in the news lately about a certain trawl group where they're bringing in halibut that was ground up for fish meal. Was there any, like our shoreside IPHC personnel, were they able to use anything that was coming in and gather any data from that at all?
I'm not aware of that. I'll ask IPHC staff if anybody has any information about this. It doesn't seem what we do.
What was the question, John?
Yeah, without mentioning the names, there's a trawl group where their computers and cell phones were seized by state troopers to find out that halibut and other species were being brought in, and the processors were grinding up for fish meal. Well, I mean, yeah.
Alaska Observer Program. I know that the Alaska Observer Program is planning on talking about that issue during their trainings with observers, and potentially observers could see something at sea and write it down. That's their job. So maybe you'll get data on that from other fisheries operations that actually work with trawlers directly too next year. I'm not sure.
Well, that's a groundfish forum. Is who it is. But I don't know, it's been going on for a long time, so I don't know. I'm just find it interesting. All of a sudden they want to get involved in it because I don't think the state's ever had the appetite to stand up to anything in the past. So I'm kind of surprised they want to get involved in it now. But time will tell, I guess. It's interesting though, because you're not hearing any more about it other than that little blurb that we've read. And that's really about it so far.
Well, hopefully, that doesn't continue, but if by chance it does continue, it seems like that'd be a missed opportunity on the IPHC's part to get some data out of that.
Or get behind it. We need to get.
Well, I'm just thinking that this is a good time to look at the trawl bycatch, the trawl issues, the trawl fleet training orcas and seals to chase the boats and eat the bycatch. So, I mean, there's the trawl impact on the ground fishery is, I mean, how big is it? We know it's big. I mean, I think we all know it's big. We just don't know how big. And this might be a really good time to kind of open that up and examine it.
What gets talked about every year, and I mean, even at the annual meetings, it comes up there too. And at least in a conference board anyway, and of course, gets back into Canadian versus American, but Canadians will sit there and point the finger. But then if you know people on the Canadian side, I mean, not just listen to rhetoric in a room, but both countries have the same problem. It's not exclusive, and the governments are supporting the problem. So both governments. So it's really frustrating that. But you sit in a conference board meeting, and there's always somebody that wants to. But if you know people behind the, like here we develop relationships and you learn all this stuff. So.
On the law enforcement aspect of that, on the state, on their investigation, as a stakeholder for the halibut, I think it's maybe something to be really attuned to and to be a party of any fines for financial compensation for the amount of halibut specific that they determine were illegally bycatched and illegally sold. Might be a pretty good chunk of change there to go to the halibut commission. But I think you'd have to be on board as a not a litigator, but as a affected party. But if we don't say anything, then it'll just not be included in as one of, for lack of better words, a victim of the crime if they take it as a crime or a civil penalty.
So I'm a little bit confused. We'll study sand fleas and all other kinds of depredation, but we're not allowed to, we don't even know the impact of one user group when we're not allowed to even study that. We don't have answers to that. And I'm just kind of confused. I don't understand why is there some reason or something I'm missing here? Because you guys go to see the bigger picture. You go to all these other meetings and, some like Bruce was saying, there's some things like, well, maybe we should talk about them, but it's controversial. Is that what the inhibiting factor? I mean, this is science, right? So why don't we study that?
No, it's very good points, and it's certainly within the RAB's mandate to make recommendations to that effect. And then it goes to the commission, and then we can have that more public discussion. And the commission at that point will sort of decide if they want to allow us to allocate resources to it or not. But it's very much within the RAB's mandate to provide those sorts of recommendations. So if that's something you feel passionate about and you'd like to elevate to the commission, maybe discuss very specifically the kind of text that you'd like in the report for that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I don't belong to any group. I don't have friends. I'm not worried about anything. So let's go for it.
All right, you start drafting. So maybe let's pause there and really think about it, and let's throw some ideas across the table about what you would like to bring to the commission's attention precisely. Yeah, sure.
To piggyback off of Kevin's statement there about civil penalties, was if something like that does occur, that those funds be used to for research for the IPHC to better understand what was removed. And yeah.
I think stuff like this spreads like wildfire, and a statement from the commission saying that we want to be involved in any follow-up on this and somebody needs to get their teeth into it. That could generate some momentum, that we're trying on social media every day, right? So there hasn't been a whole lot of it, but we just got to maintain that the people who have been informed of it follow up on it and inform us or anyone. We want some follow-up. We want some response. We want an answer, whether it's true or not true. It's a big deal, and we want to be part of the process of digging into this thing. We got some clout, and if it goes out to all the membership, it's a lot of people talking about it, and it's a pretty controversial thing to do, So I don't think it would be hard to generate a lot of momentum behind this with just a couple of, whether it's a press release or I don't know how the best vehicle for it, but it'll get some momentum.
Where is it at now? I mean, it's just some news blurb. Is NIMS looking into it to find them, or do you know?
My understanding is it's an investigation that's going on right now with the Alaska State Troopers, the one that did the raid.
We need to be looped into all of this for sure. It's halibut.
And so just very specifically, can you capture exactly the issue that you're talking about so I can try and make sure it's reflected in the report?
Well, I'm probably the least qualified to come up with the wording that would be appropriate, but we're studying depredation, we study mortality, from released fish. We study all this stuff, but I know nobody really wants to get into turf wars but it seems to me we should be able to, just like sand fleas or just like sperm whale depredation, we should call it what it is and talk about the impacts on and quantify them as best as we can and actually study that so we can make recommendations for policy in other bodies, governing bodies, that can change things to have a positive impact on our halibut resource that is at a historic low point and impacting the lives of, tens of thousands of people. So I don't know how, Jim or a lot of you guys could find the language for that, but if we need to spend 15 minutes in a room hammering that out, I think we should do it at this meeting, David, and articulate that.
Other thoughts, specific wording?
Yeah, something like illegal retention of halibut in other sectors needs to be documented, explored, and communications with enforcement entities to find out exactly what was taken.
That was very quick. Can you slow down?
It's the illegal retention of halibut from other sectors, needs to be documented, explored, communications with enforcement entities, so we have a clear idea of exactly what was removed. That's just a start. If anyone wants to jump in, please.
If you want to go down that road, then you can throw the unguided charter sector in the loop too, because that's a huge sector that's taken a lot of undocumented fish. And a couple of us were talking earlier this morning about that too, that we're, I've been fishing halibut since 1975, and there was no halibut back then. I mean, today is great compared to what it was in 77 and 76. So, and it's not saying a lot. So, but the stocks did come back as well. What was it? 76, 77, we got rid of the foreign dragging. Theoretically, it wasn't total, but it was a start of it with the Magnuson-Stevens Act. And then those fish came back. And those were mature fish that came back. They weren't babies that all of a sudden just popped up. So where they were, I don't know. But I know I had an old timer friend that his theory was that there was so little feed out there that they had to scatter out so thin. There was no concentration. And he might have a point, but because we never even saw bird life on the ocean back in those days. It was so dead. But it came back. But what we've got now is we have more user groups of the resource. We didn't have a sports sector back in those days. All we had was a commercial longline fishery. So now we got 3 user groups. We've got a bycatch group that's been running pretty much unchecked ever since they started dragging about 20, 25 years ago. We got a sport charter sector that has been unchecked in particularly one segment of it. But the state of Alaska's never had an appetite to deal with that. And that's why I'm kind of surprised that they jumped in on this one, when to go after the groundfish farm and Kodiak. But it's interesting, we just don't know any more than what that article is. But I don't know how to encapsulate that, but I think that all user groups need to be looked at equally and held accountable.
I think that's a great subject. I'm just coincidentally, I lent someone 3 years ago, over the past couple of years, a few $1 million to build a self-guided lodge just outside of town. Fortunately, he's going bankrupt. So I'm not going to get my money back, but I'm going to probably own this thing in 6 weeks. And I don't really want to be in the self-guided business. But if the issue is, and what we're talking about here is accountability, right? Documentation, right? Instead of just headlines and rumors and, there's 50, marine mammals following every trawler and they're dumping fish over and they're all getting eaten. So, we do want accountability. So this so-called self-guided, and this guy really, those people are self-guided. I mean, they're just, I don't know what he puts on their GPS, which shouldn't be allowed. And I imagine he doesn't, but I don't know that. But these people go out in little boats and they're actually a danger to themselves because we fish in the ocean, a lot of them. And I mean, I can shut it all down and just take the real estate and the boats and all back, and I'll lose $1 million easy. But or I could try to make it a viable concern, and I believe I could make that business work. But the real thing is accountability, and I don't know how to really define that, because do they even report? Do they have logbooks? So they just guess, because I don't know. I haven't. People that are in the guided charter business, is what I do. We look at that and we don't like it. It's a threat to us too. And particularly when they're not actually self-guided. There's boats out there that are telling people what to do and showing them on the GPS where to fish. So I would agree that that's another, I don't know if these could be put together, but it's another area that deserves a lot of study, because that is where a lot of our halibut are going, both to the trawl fleet and to this so-called self-guided. And if we can't talk about that here because it's going to offend our neighbors or get us in some kind of hot water, then where?
I think we have to be careful we don't have too much of a scattergun approach to some of these things that are anecdotal, and we just water down how effective we are. I think that's a very serious issue. I think on this one, somebody's obviously told a state trooper about it, and that's gone from there to who knows where. Somebody's going to be tasked with following up on it. In fact, we're sitting here all talking about it. It means it's got some kind of legs under it, right? So I think we need to find out who has been tasked with digging into this, and make sure that we either demand to be kept in the loop or ask if we can help. Just drill into something that's ongoing, like right now, today. It's in the paper. Who's doing it? What are their names? What are they doing? Make sure that it stays alive and that somebody digs into it, saying we've got lots of anecdotal stories about the same thing. It's a big deal to us. Something like that. Not to negate what you say, Steve, at all, but this is a very specific one. We already got our teeth in it. Somebody does. We could throw our shoulder behind that, at least see where it goes. Somebody's working on it. Maybe we can help, or at least be part of the loop of what they find out, baby steps.
Right. And but the thing that occurs to me, and again, this might not be the proper forum, but it's like the charter halibut fishing industry. It started 30 years ago, and before they got around to actually regulating it, it was outrageous, taking 2 halibut of any size for every guest on the boat, plus the captain and the deckhand could also keep 2 halibut of any. This is like not necessary. It's a complete abuse of the resource. And when undocumented, unregulated until it was so out of control at the expense of us. I used to commercial fish exclusively, commercial fishermen. And then, it caused a lot of harm. And so, I agree with what you're saying, Bruce. I'm just responding to what Jim said, that is another area that is a serious, very serious. And if they're not even documenting, so maybe we make 2 points that we say that as the halibut commission is responsible for the resource. And if you don't have the data, I think you're supposed to say, right? You don't have the data about maybe another place where halibut are disappearing, then we should make that very simple and clear and ask the state to make sure that these people at least report what they catch.
Along those lines, and we're speaking specifically about this Kodiak case, and that on the outreach, if there is intervention or contact from the Halibut Commission, that would go one step further, that they mandate in their, if they are found guilty, first of all, we have to, if it's proven that this occurred, that an impact statement be funded by the entities involved through the scientific people of, if it's far more reaching than they just killed X amount of thousands of pounds of halibut. What's the actual environmental impact on the industry long term? Like we talk about the amount of weight of the eggs development, the impact is more than just they killed a few halibut. It's the impact on the industry that they've had long-term effects, and they based on the scientific information that all these funds have gone through over the years. I think it'd be some benefit and some real teeth into their investigation, and would show that stakeholder in any fines or anything that would be levied against that if they're found guilty. That's the big thing. They got to go through their process.
You bring up a good point. Like we're putting all our effort into, is a halibut mature at 8 years or 9 years, and a lot of work into that. It's nice and easy. You go in the lab and do all your science, collect all your data. You don't have to fight with anybody. I mean, as one of the chairs on the FAB, I'm trying to stop this Canada versus USA shit. We haven't changed the allocation between Canada and US very much in the last couple of years, 1% at the most, right? And if you want to fight between 4A and 3C and 4B and that, God bless you. Those guys fight about that shit every year, and I don't have much say in that anyways, right? So, but we do have an issue with the sporties on both sides of the border. We're under siege from that, and we should be working together on that. Instead of sitting in there, it's very easy to get distracted by that old argument, and we know trawl bycatch is a problem. It's been a problem forever. If we can just find a couple of little things, like, somebody gets into it, maybe a state trooper busts a couple of non-guided strings, and you just get some traction. And the government people, they can't really ignore that. If you give it life, they can't just say, you know what, it's coffee time, we're just going to go home. You can generate some momentum with very few people, and just with a little bit of put your shoulder behind it and demand accountability. You said you were going to look into that. Did you? What did you do? This IPHC has a lot of power to generate momentum in some of those things, I think. Anyways, probably talking too much.
Well, everything's still removals from a finite resource. So it doesn't matter how it's harvested, it's still removals. So I think it is a pretty important part of the management of the resource, from a standpoint of public input, as well as commission and the commissioners. Of
course, we can come up with all kinds of things here too, and the commissioners can ignore us too, and that's frustrating too. But everything's removals regardless of how it comes out and regardless of where it comes out, because we're all working the same resource.
Well, yeah, I think that's basically the point is it's a removal. We don't know how big it is. How can you manage a resource when you don't know all the removals? I mean, that's kind of the point I'm trying to make is if we don't know if it's 5% or 55%, how do you account for that? You make a best guess you can. Maybe this is a good time to actually get some data. And it may be easy. I mean, most of these trawlers have 24-hour monitoring.
No.
Well, some of them do. And if we can get some, yeah, but if we can get some data mining, I love that word, but get in there, dig the data out, the bycatch reports, that kind of stuff. I mean,
So a few years ago, time goes by, but it was just a few years ago, I suggested that the commission study the mortality of, charter fishermen. And you guys went on a charter boat, you did some studies, you looked at it and you go, okay, well, it's not that high. That's good. But you got to, you weren't guessing. Guessing isn't science. Maybe that's where science starts, but, hypothesis. But we shouldn't be guessing about major leaks in our resource. And so, like several years ago, I said, and Lando, I think you said, I'm really surprised that you would ask the commission to look at your industry to see if you guys are killing. Oh, somebody like you, one of your commercial guys. And just like, yeah, but we need to know. So I would suggest, and I think they should be separate so it doesn't get watered down, but it's nothing wrong with us making more than one recommendation to the commission. And I would suggest that these removals, we do something, whether you got to go get on a, self-guided boat in different places and see how that works, or you guys figure it out. But I think you need to, like Jim said, it's a removal and it's a big one. It's potentially a giant one. And there's no accountability apparently. So if I as a RAB member, and if we have a majority of RAB members, I would want to know that you guys are looking into that as scientists, because it's probably a major, and maybe it's not as big as we think, but it's probably a major removal that needs to be addressed, especially if people are doing it. There's this gray area about what's guided and what is not guided. And that's a big part of the problem. And there's also this conflation between sports fishing, like Alaskans that have their own boat or lease a boat, and then a self-guided business that is not really self-guided. So
Lando was trying to make a comment. Lando, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think the Groundfish Forum, if I'm correct, represents mainly the shore-based fleet out of Kodiak. And the removals we're talking about aren't undocumented, but I think just from reading the article, I don't even know anything about it. And just reading the article here, it seems like why the state troopers are involved is they think there's some kind of collusion going on between the boats and the plants and the fish meal plant. And they're actually taking that bycatch, and they've been allowed to grind up bycatch for fish meal for decades. And so they're just, I could be wrong, but I think that's basically what it is. They seized all these computers and data and stuff to see if there's actually a concerted effort to put that stuff into commerce, and they're not supposed to do that. And so it's not just the draggers and Julie, it's the fish meal plant and the processors, all of them. Trident, Silver Bay, APS, OBI, they all run draggers and they all put stuff in the fish meal plant. And so that's what they're after. And the removals in that fleet are a fraction of what we're talking about in the catcher processor fleets. And they do have 100% coverage out there, and the draggers in town, they don't. They have like 30% or something like that. Yeah. So the only way they account for that bycatch is when they take their load into town and the plant runs it. And then that's where the halibut show up, and that's where the salmon show up, and all the other prohibs. So, you know, just in volume, you say it could be huge. Well, it's not going to be huge. It's going to be a fraction. But I still think we should recommend to the commission or something to, you know, make a strong worded statement about, you know, here's yet another unknown removal from our fishery. And no one seems to, you know, account for it or whatever.
Jason, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think it's a prime example why they need 100% monitoring coverage on their boats. That's what goes on.
I think somewhere we're conflating two different issues here. I don't, you know, that the thing about grinding up fish, and I don't pretend to know anything about it. I heard what was said about it today. I was talking about the removals by the so-called self-guided halibut fleet. And that's the thing that as Jim said, he's talking about unknown removals. That's the only thing I remember, because I understand what you're saying. It's already documented. They've got a pretty good grip on it, whether there's something wrong with it, or there's collusion, or there's some conspiracy, or the hiding. I don't know. But for me, I'm only addressing the unguided halibut fishing, because I think it has a dramatic impact. And that business model, if nothing else, if you don't put some controls over it, there won't be anything left for guided or commercial. I mean, that might sound like an exaggeration, but there'll be a lot less left. It is a potentially, it's a growing industry that people want. I don't want a 37-inch fish. I want to fish on my unguided boat and catch 2 halibut of any size. And in the meantime, they're stealing and destroying all kinds of other fish, yellow eye. There's nobody watching anything. There's no enforcement as far as I know at all. And so every marine resource that's available to catch is being sucked up by an ever-growing self-guided, so-called self-guided fleet. And I think it deserves some attention now before 10 years goes by and go, well, that guy Daniels is right. You know, we're kind of screwed now. So.
Not trying to make your port samplers fish cops, but is there any way that, you know, that this could be documented if they observe, you know, say halibut coming in from a user group that doesn't have an approved gear method to even harvest them?
Sure. Yeah, they would definitely tell me. They tell me everything. I can tell them during training next year to look. But yeah, I would document that and I would share it with appropriate parties for sure. Yeah.
You don't see it.
Yeah, the main thing, Sean, is
No,
that
they
they get
only go-
notified when we're coming in,
Yeah.
and they don't get notified on the other fleets.
Yeah. They're only
So-
there for halibut offloads and
Right, and blackout
sometimes halibut
offloads,
bycatch from
yeah.
sailfish. But
But they might see something off the side, but that's not their focus. Their focus is us. But yeah. Right. Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, just the
Yeah,
way they
they do.
offload those fish, though, they're not going to see it. You know,
No.
they pump them out, they run them down their belts. You know, mainly enclosed or in their infrastructure. And you know, I look all the time when they're pumping out the draggers because they're always there. And you know, there all kinds of stuff comes up, and mainly they're small halibut they're catching. You know, so they blend in with their soles or their pollock or whatever, and it's not like it's real obvious. You don't see a 30-pound fish going down the line or anything like that. But it all adds up, and it's an unknown removal. So we should at least make note of it or something.
Mhm.
You know, back on that, we're sort of switching gears back and forth, but they're both good and probably should be 2 separate recommendations, but they were both extremely valid. But on the unmonitored, unguided thing, like if we want to go fishing halibut, I mean, never mind Canada versus US, I got a you buy millions of dollars in quotas and boats and you go out fishing. You get all the way where you go out fishing and like, hold it. You want to go fishing, you got to have cameras, you got to have electronic logs, you got to have port monitoring. Port monitoring costs are just ridiculous right now. It's so expensive just to go fishing after I already bought everything to go fishing. These guys have been, like you said, in the last 20 years, it's gone from 0 to 100 miles an hour. These guys haven't been burdened by any of that stuff. If they're going to get involved in removals, it's time for them to bear some of the discomfort that we're bearing for what we're doing, you know? It's been great, and they've had their moment in the sun. They're removing halibut. They need some draconian standards to monitor their removals, and it's expensive, and it's a pain in the ass, and it's inconvenient. And how about that? Everyone who wants to take a fish out of the water right now of any kind, anywhere, has to deal with something that's expensive and inconvenient and a nuisance. And they need it too. It's their turn, right? I mean, that's how it is.
Well, sorry, but now we're conflating a third user group. You know, there's a gigantic, the charter halibut industry is regulated, and we have daily logbooks that we have to issue electronically, and we have guided anglerfish. If I don't report that guided anglerfish by midnight, I get fined, and I have been fined, so it's not as, we could say, let's take it to another user group, and bear with me for a sec, and we could go to subsistence fishing, which where we go, that could take all the halibut, right? So let's make every, guy with a 14-foot lund put a big ass camera on his boat and take a selfie every time he catches a subsistence fish and barters it away for some fuel or some drugs or whatever. I get what you're saying. It's like, by God, the commercial guys are just hammered with this stuff, because all you commercial guys are thieves. You're gonna steal fish. You don't care about raping, and some us charter Nazis too. We're horrible, but yeah, the charter industry got away with too much too soon. Now they're probably fairly regulated, and it's I'm pretty confident that the record keeping is accurate, but the unguided fishing, which we don't like either. If you're a power trawler, you hate hand trawlers, right? So nobody likes a new guy coming in, but getting into your neighborhood. But I'm just saying that this is a group. If let's not conflate them. There's guided charter fishing, and the growing entity now. The scary thing that there is no accountability is unguided. So yeah, I don't want to have to put a camera on every one of my guided boats, but I'd like to eliminate all the unguided boats without infringing on the right of any U.S. citizen or Alaska resident to go out on his own boat, or even to rent a boat to go catch a fish. But when you got people that their whole business model is, we're going to tell you where to fish, we're going to have another boat out on the ocean that's going to show you how to bait your hook, do everything for you. You're in effect being guided. And because if you're truly unguided, like, well, you guys are commercial fishermen. You guys are experts. We're guided fishermen. We're experts at what we do. Truly unguided, they'll bumble around. They ain't going to catch much. But these guys that are unguided aren't unguided. And furthermore, there's no accountability. And so I don't mean to talk loud or whatever. I'm not trying to be defensive either. It's just my nature. So forgive me. But I don't want to conflate three different fisheries. I want to make sure we understand. As much as you might want to put a camera on every one of my boats, and I get that, because like, God, I would hate to commercial fish actively myself these days. I would go boom, so I don't.
I don't want to steer your discussion. You've got at least three different topics going here at the same time. But on the unguided recreational topic, just to provide you some clarity about where the data come from, we rely exclusively on DFO and ADF&G sampling programs for the unguided sport fisheries in the two countries. So we get the estimates directly from them. And to be honest, I couldn't explain to you the sampling design and the way that those estimates are built up. So a tangible start on this topic would be to encourage the commission to ask both DFO and ADF&G for a detailed explanation of the methods that they're currently using to estimate the level of removals from those sectors. You guys are right. If we get the removals wrong, we're going to get the assessment wrong. So it's an important component of the stock assessment. But laying out those methods would then allow us to go through and look at them and provide some scientific feedback. And, you know, maybe they're great, maybe they're not. But that would be a very tangible request that would move us forward, because it's none of this sampling is our program. It's all, we rely exclusively on them. So we're not even necessarily don't even know exactly how that whole monitoring works.
If I can add just to that, I will just add that for at least for Alaska, every year IPHC receives a letter from Alaska Department of Fish and Game that provides at least some of the details about how that sampling and estimates are derived. There's a difference between the charter sector and unguided sector. For the charter sector, the estimates are based on Pacific halibut recorded in the charter logbooks. But for the unguided sectors, the estimates rely on the statewide harvest survey that is conducted by ADF&G. So this is the core that we do receive every year, a letter with some details about that estimation methods, including estimates as well as standard errors associated with that. We can certainly share this letter if that's something that you would be interested in to learn about. This is for the recreational sector. We can, if that's of interest, also provide request additional information if that's something that you would like to learn more about. I will just note that we did receive new estimates for the recreational sector in Alaska, and the unguided sector. It is the percentage of the taken projection is increasing. So just if you are interested in specific details, these are fisheries data overview paper includes the tables that provides the summary of end of year projections for all Pacific halibut, for all sectors that retain Pacific or have mortality for Pacific halibut. So if you're interested in specific numbers by sectors that result in Pacific halibut mortality, these are included in the fisheries data overview that has been provided for the interim meeting. And we can also, if it's of interest, we can also provide it on the screen if you would like to just look at where the fishery is projected to be by the end of this fishing year.
Trying to do the math on my phone. How much for one little business that I'm trying to figure out.
Well, what they do is they do what they call a creel sample, which they do a mail out to people with sport fishing license, and whether or not you turn it in, it's up to you. And same way with going hunting. You get a hunting license, they send you something out. Did you go deer hunting? Yes, no. How many did you shoot? So on and so forth. But so it's the same thing on a sports sector. I'm at the unguided and the personal sport. Yeah. What's that?
The subsistence guys.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole nother. Right. Or if you like I think most people don't even turn it in, but I've never turned one in. I just go, I got enough, I got so much paper I got to deal with. I'm not going to worry about that one, throw that away. So, but.
The data, like she was saying, the data that derived from subsistence or non-guided are just voluntary surveys that
Yeah.
return or not.
Right. Yeah. But as a commercial fisherman, you can't even go fishing without notifying them. See if you got to carry an observer, and then you can go fishing, and then you got to notify them at least 3 hours prior to when you want to unload, so they can be there with their guns and badges and scrutinize your offload. So, I mean, we can't do anything without being monitored in some capacity. And then you got the Coast Guard out on the water. And sometimes the NIMS boat comes bombing along. You never know.
I would recommend, for our body to recommend that the commission reach out to Alaska and to Canada and ask for a detailed explanation of how they account for their unguided removals. And then we can go from there.
And just to add on that, so we do some of that information is also provided in the national reports that are prepared by each contracting party each year for the annual meeting. So it's a really question of how much more of additional details you would like to see.
Yeah, because basically you're getting data from the state and from DFO, and that's all you can work with is what they provide you. And we're just basically saying that data is completely useless is what we're saying in essence, but just based on our own experience. But I know your hands are tied in that regard too. I remember years ago we were looking at survey stations and south of Portlock. Well, from about halfway down to Portlock south, all the way beyond Trinity Islands was just dead on the surveys. And it was like, well, what's going on here? And I remember I raised this, I go, I know what's going on. And anyway, it was like, whoa, but all of a sudden the room went quiet and then it just exploded with comments, but because it was, that the trawl sector has actually altered the grounds out there, with all the bottom dragging that's gone on. But I mean, I used to pull some hellacious trips off albatross and whatnot, but to go there today, want to haul empty hooks, I guess I could be. There was a lot of areas that were difficult to fish with hang-ups and whatnot, and all that bottom has been changed now with the big roller gear and everything else. So like I had a dragger explain to me, if you got a problem, you fix the problem. So they do, but yeah, I don't know.
One thing that you just said that, it's worthless. The creel studies, the creel count and all that, most people don't. One thing that we could, I might be premature, but if you own a self-guided business, why can't that business owner be responsible if he has 7 boats going out every day for tracking the catch and reporting it on a daily or weekly basis? And then this is what they do to my people. They'll call up my clients and go, well, what did you catch compared to what our captains log? And sometimes my clients go, hey, I got a call from Fish and Game. What do you want me to say? I go, tell them the damn truth. I got nothing to hide, presuming my captains didn't do something untoward. But, if you wanted a good place to start, and I know that we don't make policy here for Fish and Game, but a good place to start for the unguided thing for accountability was hold the owner of the company responsible and have him sign it. And if it turns out that he's making fraudulent reports because somebody's following up by making phone calls to his clients, and sometimes they don't quite recall, but then find the guy, and find him a lot and make him sweat a little bit, put a camera on him in his office every day, and whenever he opens up his laptop, it comes on. I don't know, just kidding. You get my point.
Just curious for you scientists down there, do you guys find a uniformity in the way each of these user groups or even each of the 2 countries measure removals or account for removals?
So just to give you an idea, for example, there's been a lot of discussion now about the unguided sector, right? Particularly in Alaska. So I can tell you, for example, at the confidence intervals for the estimates for the unguided sector, they're pretty large. If you think about the 2C unguided sector, where we have yield estimated at 1.3 million pounds, the confidence intervals is anywhere between 1.1 to 1.6 million, right? So this is the level of information that we're working with the methods that are currently applicable to what we can report on.
1.2 million pounds, that is the estimated unguided catch in Southeast Alaska? Is that what you said, Masha?
The 2C unguided million pounds, yes.
If this is a certain degree of frustration for you folks, then maybe we should, that should be an ask, that there's more uniformity, more detailed explanation of what's being removed and accounted for between user groups and countries.
We gotta be careful on this though, like, you know, in this room, we've already said stuff that would cause all kinds of trouble. Like, what we're saying is that we ask ADF&G, how are you enforcing this? And then we say, well, we think actually you're doing a shitty job, right? And I think you're totally wrong. So now the only person who can help us, we've now identified them as an adversary. So that, you know, how can we help you guys? You know, by the way, the commercial fleet pays 60 cents a pound to monitor their catch, right? How can we help you guys raise money for more enforcement? They're like, well, we're stretched thin already. We're doing our best. And now we got the biggest entity in halibut step up and say that we're a piece of shit. You know, we gotta get them online. We gotta help them lobby for more resources to do better enforcement and say people are sneaking around and the system's not working, but you guys are hamstrung because you've only got 3% of the enforcement budget that the commercial fleet does, and we need to do something to help you do a better job. Somehow we've got to work in league with these guys. Otherwise, it's going to get worse, not better.
Yeah, we could give 50% of the commercial budget over to them.
Sure. Yeah. Just make these guys, maybe your sports fishing halibut license costs $500 to go catch 2 fish. That's what we're dealing with.
I know. Yeah.
Get it out there. Get ADF&G the resources they need to help them monitor it, but without calling them down, right? That's what we got to be careful of.
Lando, can you speak to the microphone?
Maybe just a quick response to Sean's comment. I think the challenge that we have is that every sector that's accessing the halibut resource has its own challenges with monitoring. And there really is nothing like uniformity, even within the commercial fishery across areas and components and sectors. The data, you might not believe it, but the data team here and I and Basha and everybody, it takes weeks to put all of these estimates together, even the estimates that are coming basically pre-packaged and ready to go for us. So I think your best impact is going to be focusing on specific topics and issues and sectors where you have a distinct concern. Because I mean, we can come up with questions on every sector and little aspects of them. The unguided recreational component, Basha's right, there are confidence intervals reported, but there's certainly still some outstanding questions about the way those programs are run, the basis in terms of creel checks and, you know, self-reported creel surveys and things. That one seems to me like one that you might actually get a little traction on in terms of getting some more detail on the methods that are provided, that could be provided to back up those estimates. And if those methods are described more fully, then perhaps we can have a bigger discussion about where the gaps are in those. But I would recommend against just going sort of broad uniform across all sectors, because we could literally dig into any sector and have some questions about exactly where all the components are coming from.
I think that's what I was thinking. I realize you guys get yearly reports about the unguarded sector, but I was thinking more of like requesting a technical discussion and a review about how they're going about getting those numbers for you. Would that be beneficial?
So as I mentioned, that is part of the annual letter from ADF&G that the IPHC receives together. So it's not just the estimate, it's also explanation of the methods, but obviously you can always ask for additional details to that, right? But we do receive a general kind of letter with a methodology and you know, additional information about how it was estimated, like how many fish was estimated, how was the average weight of that fish derived, what's the total derive based on that what's the confidence interval. So we do have that available. Maybe additional level of detail that might be requested.
Okay, looks like we've exhausted that conversation for the moment. When we bring up the report text just after the break, we'll obviously have some more discussion and more clarity to be sought and recorded in the report. So I think that was very productive. Thank you. Any other topics you want to cover?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to, sorry, I just really quickly before we move on, Dasha, is that paper available for us to read about the methodology so that we can know what they are doing to better ask for recommendations for, to guide them?
I believe in the past we'll publish it as an information paper. We can add it to interim meeting, maybe documentation as information paper. That's all right. We typically, as needed, we can publish the official communication that is sent to the IPHC.
Okay, thank you. And I might have missed this, but do we know if the unguided sector, sports sector is required to keep a logbook and submit that? Steve, do you know?
I know the estimates for the unguided sector are based on the statewide harvest survey, the creel survey that was mentioned. Actually, the kind of on the boat recording, I would have to follow up with specific details about how this is recorded kind of on an ongoing basis.
Okay, yeah, because if it's just coming from the creel samplers, I mean, I know in Sitka, a few of the unguided businesses that have multiple boats don't use docks that are public docks. So there aren't creel samplers at their docks. They're like private. So they wouldn't, if they're not. Yeah, so I guess I echo the same questions that a lot of the folks in the room have about the unguided sector, in the sense that if it's just a creel sampling, how good is that coverage and what are they missing? And yeah, and is there a logbook or not that they're required, or the business owner that owns the boats or whatever is required to submit? So if that information is already known and in this paper that you're referencing, then I would love to read that. If it's not known, then that would be something I would want to request, as I think Sean was saying, from like a technical paper. Sorry, I don't remember who said that, but.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think we're kind of ignorant about, I'm certain there are no logbooks that are required from self-guiding. I'm almost 100% certain. And to your point, nobody's looking at that business that's outside of Pelican 1/4 mile. And there's a big one in the Water's Edge in Elfin Cove. I don't believe there's any port sampling in Elfin Cove. And there's Doc Warner's, and that's been in business for 30 years, an excursion inlet. And of course, they're little islands to themselves. They're not in any cities. So I would agree that we're having some emotional or, some impassioned sort of inquiry here. And I think that we need to temper that with some information, because I really don't know. But I think that and Bash, I never really quite understood, is that the estimate that the unguided charter fleet is taking over 1 million pounds a year of halibut?
So if we want to maybe pull the paper to the screen, we can also show that the estimates for all sectors. Maybe if the support can provide me an access to share the document, I can put on the screen the document.
Doesn't look like you're logged in, Basha. Are you logged into the meeting?
I will in a second.
Okay. That's right. I can see the team scrambling with the mouse and trying to find you. Okay, looks like you're a presenter now if you want to try and share.
So as I said, so we do not provide this paper specifically for the RAB because it's never been requested before, but we do provide the end of year projections as a preparation for the stock assessment, and we published that for the interim meeting. So these are the, again, end of year projections as projected in November for the end of the year. And if I will go to the summary table that provides the information by IPHC regulatory area and all sectors. So if you're specifically interested in unguided sector in Alaska, so if you look at the 2C, we have a line here, unguided recreational fishery, which was projected at a little bit over 1 million pounds, and the estimate currently for mortality is 1.36 million pounds, which comes at 135% of the initial projection.
Sorry, Basha, just the aging end of the table we're struggling to see. Can you get rid of the left and then expand it for us, please?
This way. Okay, is that better? Mhm. So this is 2C, and you can see the guided recreational fishery is reported separately.
And that number comes from voluntary return on a survey.
So it comes from as estimated by ADF&G and their modeling efforts based on the data that is provided in that survey. Correct, and Ian can provide this is the initial reported against initial projection as based on the split between the fishery limits and projections following the decision by the commission last year on the TCOIs.
Yeah, so there's a catch sharing plan in place that delineates the guided and the commercial components. But the unguided is a separate line item. And for our projections, we just use the previous year. We don't try to do a time series analysis. It has gone up and down in the past, and we don't attempt to predict what the unguided participation is going to be. So that value of 1.1 or 1.01 million pounds, that would have been the estimate for 2024 that we had at the time we made the projections moving forward. It's a very unsophisticated projection. So it's really not super important to compare to the projection other than to realize that that probably does represent about a 30% increase from the year before. So it's definitely a growing component. And as you can see, it's about twice the size of the guided sector in 2C now, which is a big piece of the overall mortality.
And we don't know how accurate it is.
And I was just looking, so keep in mind every year, so when we report, so currently we report the projected for 2025, and every year we also receive the updated estimates for previous years, right? So as you can see, the current projections for 2025 were just a little bit over 1 million pounds. But if you look at the revised final values for 2024, these actually came to, for unguided sector for 2C, to actually 1.4 million pounds. And this is the data we always, when we compile the data for the stock assessment for all the sectors, we always update not only the current year projection, but also all the year priors where there have been any revisions.
So there's no cap whatsoever on this business model, zero. And you guys have caps, we commercial guys have caps, and the guided fishery has caps and monitoring, maybe not as, as, to the extent that you guys have, but it's pretty controlled. I have a high degree of confidence in it, but this is totally unmonitored, and those numbers are likely to be wildly off. And give it another few years, because although Doc Warner's has been in business for 30 years, there's a well, I say brand new, I'm an old guy. So about 5 or 6 years ago, Elfin Cove added about, I don't know how many, I got 20 or 30 unguided boats with 2 people a day fishing halibut. And now I was lent somebody $30 million to build an unguided business right next door. And so I'm basically devaluing the business I'm going to own in 6 weeks. But you commercial guys and us charter guys and anybody that cares about halibut needs to get a grip on this thing and know, quantify it, one, scientifically, and stop it, or at least to make them follow the rules and put a cap on it. And that's political, I know.
That will be a question for including an unguided sector in the catch sharing plan, but that will be the North Pacific Fisheries Management Council.
We kind of have to make sure we phrase it that anecdotally, we feel like they're unable to capture all of these landings, and what can we do to help get more resources or get more monitoring? I mean, good Lord, I don't know if you guys understand how much the monitoring on Canadian boats is. We've got a tamper-proof hard drive on our boat that takes and 2 cameras every 10 seconds for as long as you fish, even if it's 2 months. On some of our boats, it is 2 months. It takes your hydraulic pressure, your lat long, a snapshot with both of the cameras, the attitude of the boat. I'm not sure what else, but it takes every 10 seconds, it takes a snapshot of that in a tamper-proof hard drive. And at the end of the trip, they take your logbook, they take a snapshot out of that, and they compare what they see on the camera, on the monitoring, to what you put in your logbook. And if it doesn't match, it triggers an audit of your whole trip from beginning to end, which you pay for. It's expensive and it's a lot. These guys, and if you land fish above your quota, do you know what the charge is? It's called theft from the crown, and it's a felony. And that's for 100 pounds of halibut over top of what you monitor, if they figure you did it on purpose. I mean, these guys have got a license to kill, and we just want to bring them in the crowd with us. We're not trying to target them. There's like Jim says, there's removals going on here that these guys are doing it with impunity, and they've been spoiled for a while. I get it. If I could be spoiled, I would too, right? But we've got to put a shoulder behind monitoring this. The quota's going down. We're all under siege. They need to too. It's an expensive fishery to protract, and it's not just free for every American to go out and pull a fish out of the water. Sorry, that ship has sailed.
Man, Big Brother is the crown.
Thank you for bringing this up. I'm a little blown away. I didn't think, we'd be seeing these numbers and the unguided fishery taking more than the guided recreational fishery. And we're just looking at one area. So thanks for bringing this up. I'm a little blown away.
Just for completeness, I can also show 3A. So 3A numbers are a little bit lower. 2C is the highest on unguided sector.
Yeah, I think in 2C, I don't know, I've made this statement years ago that I've been amazed at the resiliency of the resource. Because you get down into 2C and when I'm going all the way down towards Ketchikan, down through Craig and all that, it is just absolutely mind blowing. All these yachts, that's all unguided, big yachts from wherever they come from, all over the world. And there's yachts that come up into the Craig area every year. And that's all they do is sit there all summer long. And you got client after just groups of clients flying out. And that's all unguided. And then Point Baker, drive down through Point Baker, 14, 15 boats out there with one boat shepherding them, like Steve was talking about, making sure that they bait their hook properly and give them marks and drive around. And it's pretty mind blowing. I'm just amazed that there isn't more people that don't die in that business, because they'll give them a 10-minute tutorial on how to drive an outboard and turn them loose. And there's one in Wrangell Narrows here last year where the wife cut in front of a fishing boat and she ended up dying, but her husband stayed alive. But right in the Wrangell Narrows, and where's the fishing boat go? You're in a channel that's only 75 feet wide. But it's a huge problem, and I think these numbers I'd be shocked if they were even 25% of what's really going on. But it just comes back to removals again, where there's no accountability. But I know I deal with accountability every day. Every day we're on the water, we're held accountable for everything. So I've had people say, God, how in the world? I had a guy in the oil industry, he said, I thought we were regulated. You guys are really regulated. He said, we're nothing compared to you guys. And they've got all the environmentalists hovering over them too. But I don't know how you word that, so.
Okay, well, with that, we might wrap up discussions, have a break, and straight after the break, we're going to, or during the break, we'll put up the video of the catch protection research, and then we will come back straight after that and adopt the report. There's only about 36 odd paragraphs, and half of those are administrative, so it's not too much, so it shouldn't take us too long to work through it. But it will be particularly important to look at those paragraphs that we've been discussing, or the recommendations and requests, and make sure that's what you want. So yeah, sorry, Sir Jim.
Oh, Dave, is there going to be a point where we can, because there's one more thing I wanted to get out there, but as far as a project for the IPHC, is there
Do it
a
now.
point later on? Do it now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to follow up more on that Sago thing with the I don't know what you call it, a whale deterrent type unit. And I'd hate to see the ability to use different pieces of equipment die. And the IPHC owns these two pieces, and if there is some mechanism where the industry could still come alongside and I don't know, the funding's probably gone on it now, I suppose, but you probably used it up. But if there's some way for industry to still access those tools and even report back in with development and whatnot, and not only the Sago unit, but also there's other stuff, because it's an ongoing process of dealing with mortality of fish with the whales and everything else. So there's some way of putting language in there to where IPHC can keep, or industry can team up with the IPHC in that some capacity, I think. So just something that, so the commission knows
Maybe
about
Claude
it.
can chime in and maybe explain the latest use of the catch protection device that was done recently.
Yeah, so we did provide an opportunity for the Oracle, who is familiar with using the device, an opportunity to actually go out and use the device in October on a quota trip. The Halibut Commission issued a scientific research permit, which allowed the vessel to use the device. provided that we had a sampler on board to kind of record its performance. So I think you're more talking about an opportunity going forward to continue experimenting with the device. So either like as an advisory board supporting that sort of thing or something analogous to it. I don't know that we had funding for that other sampler in this case. So we'd probably want to try to find a way that something could be done there. I don't know whether that would be regulatory recommendation or a permit style that would allow for it, but Dave might be able to speak to that.
Yeah, I think your point's very valid, and I think you're also suggesting it be a little bit more general. And so what I've just quickly written down, and tell me if it would encapsulate it. So the RAB is requesting that the Secretariat continue to collaborate with industry on a range of research projects, noting the recent successful collaborations involving the catch protection study. Is that the gist of what you're after? So it wouldn't only limit it to the catch protection study, but other types. Yeah. Okay. Bruce, I think you said you had one as well.
Yeah, sorry, we're dragging it out a bit. This is a whole new subject. Back around 12 years ago, the sablefish stocks were in decline, somewhat similar to what we're talking about right now. And we did put a floor in the quota below which it was a hard bottom. And it's a departure from the science when you do something like that. And there's been some talk about kind of some preamble that might open that door about, you know, even if we didn't fish, the spawning biomass would go down. We're in a declining stock phase, and maybe some socio-economic is the latest jargon on that, impact of putting the quotas below a certain threshold that we might put a base level on. I think about 4 years later, the black cod circled back up and clawed above that base, and it's back above that. There's some talk of trying to introduce something like that in halibut. That's about all I know about it. Do you guys know, is there any talk about that, or implications, or an appetite to do something like that?
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. I just looked it up, and in 2018, we did investigate that as part of the management strategy evaluation. We had a floor of 30 million pounds, which the TCY, which I think we're really close to right now. And I can't remember the results exactly on that, but that's the sort of project can easily do as part of the management strategy evaluation. We can simulate forward in time, say the TCY is always 30 million pounds. What are the potential outcomes and what are the risks on that?
When you put a hard floor on and you depart from the science, is that something we want to look at? I guess it's something we should think about.
Yeah, and I think, you know, this is the perfect place for the RAB to let the commission as well as the MSAB know that's of interest, and then that can get carried forward through the normal channels.
Maybe to loop back to the catch protection stuff just for a second. I think we don't anticipate likely being able to secure any more funding for that project directly. And so I don't know where the RAB stands on it, but one of our thoughts is that if we can't push the research forward any further, the next logical step might be to allow the fleet to actually do some innovation on the topic. And in order to do that, the commission would have to consider some type of regulatory change, be it broad or very directed to allow people to do some of that exploration. And I don't think we want to be prescriptive in any kind of a recommendation there, other than, I think just a general recommendation to collaborate might not be enough, because we don't really have a plan for where we could get more money to do that collaboration. And I think it might be something that we may have to hand off to the fleet to let them do that. And that would require some commission action to do that. So just to further that discussion a little bit, I don't know if Claude, you have anything to add to that, but given the funding situation right now, we've done pretty well to land 2 pretty big grants for that project, but the next one's going to be tough. The program, the bycatch reduction program that we funded this under, is gone. It was eliminated this year. So we're a little stuck on that project.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, we're certainly interested in collaborating whenever we can. And we do have probably enough data now to provide information if the commissioners have questions about or concerns about sublegal damage, bycatch damage versus like this calculator that we talked about. We could provide, if they had questions about coming up with some sort of regulation change or permission to allow you guys to continue using devices like that and making modifications so that they're more applicable to a wider suite of the fleet. That we need to find a way to hand that off, and you may be able to, I don't know, put a recommendation in to that effect, that you'd like to be able to keep the momentum of that moving independent of us being able to find finances, I guess. And then they can make determinations on how they would approach that.
Yeah, so the regulatory changes that you're talking about wouldn't be through the commission, right? It'd be through the council, or what? Allow us to use that kind of gear? I mean, it just can't be a regulation or a recommendation. I mean, yeah, we're all into using it and tweaking it and see if we can make it work better. But it's also the Sago company, whoever, they own that. I mean, you own it. And if we were to modify it, is there any kind of proprietary monkey business?
Not sure on the priority monkey business. I mean, there could be a recommendation that we certainly own it. We're not in the process or in the practice of going out and regularly fishing, so they are now sitting idle. And so you might make a recommendation that you'd like to, I don't know, have the opportunity to continue investigating it or something to that effect, and possibly with the use of those assets that are currently there, because they're going to gather dust now. Yeah, but as far as regulations, certainly there's a regulation that is representing some concern over minimal injury. And then there's also the aspect that there's other species involved in the catches that the Halibut Commission has no jurisdiction in, where it might be a multi-pronged thing where you'd want to address that. We certainly have data on it. We've collected data on it. We haven't reported that yet, but that is in process, or will be in process over the next year. But trying to keep some momentum might take some efforts, both with the Halibut Commission and with the council, I guess. Maybe Ian has other thoughts on that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a little complicated, and I don't think it would be helpful to try to figure out exactly what route any of that should go. I think maybe just a general recommendation to for us to continue to support efforts to allow the fleet to do some further innovation, and we'll figure out as we move forward, we'll figure out what the details of that might look like, whether it would have to go through the council or through the commission, or whether it would be under a research permit or what. It's probably not important now, but just to express some support for doing that, because we, to the degree that anybody's interested, we would like to see the fleet carry this forward and do some work on it if they're if they're interested, and if they're not, then we'll move on to the next piece of tech and see what we can come up with.
Okay. So hold tight for the moment. We are going to break for 15, come back, see the video, and then hit up the report. Okay. Cheers. Okay, so we have 38 paragraphs to adopt. And as I said, we have a number of them that are quite administrative in nature, and so we won't spend too much time on those. Sorry, guys, if everybody could just have their seats. We are live recording. Okay, so the way we're going to adopt the report is just to quickly step through paragraph by paragraph. If they are administrative, I'm just going to skip through them quite quickly. We will give the report a final proofread this afternoon before it's published, and so we'll look for any of the minor edits that are needed. So for now, we're really trying to look at the key wording within each paragraph. So first section 1 is just the opening of the session. So there are essentially just administrative paragraphs there, noting how many of you attended and who sent in apologies. Paragraph 2 is just citing the rules of procedure for the RAB, and this is just a reference paragraph so that anyone else picking up the report understands what the role of this board is. Section 2 is just the adoption of the agenda and the documents. Section 3, IPHC process. So paragraphs 4, 5, 6, and 7 are simply noting the progress that's been made as stipulated in paper 3, that 3 of the actions remain in progress, and that the RAB agreed, and this is one of those operational, that to further discuss and provide guidance on the particular request that was outstanding related to sand fleas. And so it's just, again, just highlighting that this request hadn't been completed and that you wanted to include a recommendation or potential action later on, which we have. So at the moment, it's just you're agreeing to achieve that. And then for any other actions, be combined and collated in the report. So again, those are all just administrative. Similarly for paragraph 8, just noting the outcomes of the annual meeting, nothing particular there to be concerned about. And then we have the RAB members season overview. And so I will take a bit of time, if you can just step through, read them. And so let's do A and B to start, 9A and B. And if you have any edits to A or B, please raise your hand or your. For which one, sorry? Paragraph A or paragraph A. So you want me just to put whale depredation remained an issue coastwide? Yeah. Coastwide. And then do you want me to delete everything else?
Yeah.
No objection? Okay, paragraph B. Paragraph C. Paragraph D. And again, noting that this is just highlighting issues and then you tackle them further down with any recommendations for action. Subparagraph E. Subparagraph F. Subparagraph G. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
The localized depletion I was trying to point out in 4D was St. Matthew Island.
So in brackets after 4D?
It works.
Say again?
That works for me.
Is Matthew or Matthews? I always forget. Okay. Subparagraph H. Subparagraph I. Subparagraph J.
Sorry, paragraph I would be in high numbers.
Subparagraph J. Subparagraph K.
A little bit more specific about normal activity days prior. So that specific and just in general. I guess what I'm saying is that the complaint that I was hearing was that fall activity, you say a week prior to the halibut open on the fish, they was causing bleaching of the fish, thus the low catch rate. Something effective. Fall activity even prior to that rate.
So does that work or slightly different? Okay.
Well, we'll go all area. Not that I don't know if we want that all area. I think it's more specific to 2A because the fish was set 3-day window. And
Sorry, just a reminder to use the microphone for those listening.
I think you're correct with it. 2A would be more specific in that area because of it's a directed fishery with set days. So it's a little bit more of a specific time period. So, a suggestion to look at if there is a correlation between trawl activity and low catch rates in 2A.
So a specific wording change, or are you content with what's on the screen now?
I would say that since, and I'm not familiar with, I'm speaking way out of my knowledge about your Alaska fishery basically, but the 2A, I would say concern of 2A because I didn't hear that concern as much for the other fisheries. It was more of a specific complaint because of the directed fishery and the model that they have down in the Oregon and Washington coast of being a directed fishery with the specific dates of fishing.
Okay, paragraph L. And paragraph M.
I think I would add to that one a little bit more up into 2C and 3A. Because we're seeing more and more yellow eye, and I know I'm changing my fishing habits because of it, because I don't want to load up on a yellow ice and we can't sell it. So it's just a shame to bring it in and see it disposed of. So I don't know, it'd be nice to see them raise the bycatch limits too, but right now they're only 5%. So, but it seems to be a problem all the way from Canada up through, I'd say 3A for sure.
And with the 100% retention rule now, when you inadvertently, or not inadvertently, but sometimes when you bring, like I was just talking to James about this, I was bringing in thousands and thousands of pounds over my legal limit because of the 100% retention. And then you have to arrange with the plant or with the community or something to donate it, which is a lot of logistics. And then you have nymphs coming to you in the wintertime asking you where the 15,000 pounds of yellow eye you delivered all year went to. And they comb through your fish tickets, and yeah, it's just a pain in the ass. So it is, all three areas should be included in that.
Sorry, just to clarify, so you want me to just replace that with coast-wide or leave it as a particular focus?
Yeah, I don't know how much detail you want in there, but what we're finding is that the quota's going down, the fish are getting harder to catch, and your ability to go prospecting to look for them is severely hampered. Yellow eye are way higher than, proliferance is way higher than the quotas are. And there's huge, vast areas of good halibut fishing we can't go near because of yellow eye, and it's expanding all the time. I mean, we're seeing a lot more this year than last year, and Jim's seeing it in places up in 3A where he's never seen yellow eye before, but there's whole areas of, especially west coast of Haida Gwaii. You can't get any fish. You move out deep, you're in black cod, you move in shallow, and the yellow eye used to be, maybe 60 or 70 fathoms. Now they're all the way out to 100 fathoms. And so, you can't go, we're really being hampered big time by yellow eye. So I don't know if we want to, how much of that we want to capture here, but maybe a little more than what we got there.
Okay.
I can't think
Was
of
there any additional points raised during those updates, season updates that you would like included? Sure.
I just had I want to clarify in L, if we can, the crab species, that there's always crab species there. I was trying to make a point when I brought that up, that there's an absence of a historical crab species in the stomach in favor of
Is that an invasive species that you're talking about?
I don't know if it's invasive. Yeah, I don't think so. But anyway, there's always a crab species, but the historical crab species doesn't.
I think that's reflected by the changes. So changes in the length of winter.
Okay.
And changes in the presence of crab species.
Okay.
That refers to that change from blue king crab
Okay.
to the other species that are found now, and so that's
Okay.
reflect.
I don't know. When I read it, it is like, when I read it, it's like, oh, suddenly we're seeing crab species, but crab species has always been there. It's just that there's been a changing in what they're eating.
Did you want to highlight species at all, or just leave it generic like that?
I'm fine with that. I can give you a name if you want, but I was just pointing it out to Ian. Lyre crab, Lyre. And that's predominant to St. Matthew Island waters.
Okay, so we'll just look that up and drop those in when we clean it up.
And that's specific to St. Matthew Island waters.
So would that work or something slightly different? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Awesome. Paragraph 10 is just again administrative, noting the updated draft plan. And then we jumped into the research paragraphs. And so I'll pause with these. So 5.1.1 was an overall just administrative, again, noting the paper. Paragraph 12. Again, just administrative in the sense of noting what those main objectives are. And then I'll pause on paragraph 13 and 14. So you can just read those and let me know if you concur.
Just kind of a side comment, but it's kind of nice to see things like this now because having been here long enough, and these were points that came up years previously, and it's I find it kind of a real plus to sit here and see the results come back out of some of these things that were talked about years ago.
Okay, good. Moving on to the next, the reproductive assessment, paragraphs 15, 16, 17, and 18. Okay. So we do have a recommendation there, recommended prioritizing fecundity estimates to determine the relationship between Pacific halibut female weight and total egg production. Not seeing any hands. Moving on to whale depredation, paragraphs 19 and 20. What would that be?
Is that the correct term? Picking bloom? Okay.
Okay, not seeing any other edits. 5.2 is the monitoring. So fishery dependent data, we didn't have a paper. We just had a quick verbal update. And then for the FISDS season, so the update from Kayla and team, administrative in terms of noting it and discussing it. And then later on, we get into some of the recommendations for the next fishery independent setline survey. So in terms of FIS design evaluation, I'll just pause there, paragraph 24, 25, and 26.
In C, I don't know if this would be separate or not, but weren't we just talking about if there was a civil penalty, that money could be used? So that'd be separate from exceeding a bycatch cap. That'd be for fines imposed for fish that were traded, bartered, or sold.
And just for clarity, ABM only applies in the Bering Sea, so it should probably not be part of this discussion because I believe the current investigation is only in the Gulf.
Yeah, with the troopers. And so all these fines or civil stuff would all go to the feds or the state. And then what's the mechanism to get money out of them or directed this way? So
any halibut related violations.
possible application.
Okay, then we get into agenda item 6, and this is where the majority of the requests and recommendations are provided. So paragraph 27 is just a noting of the discussion on the AI aging update. Okay. And then we're just going to take these one by one. So paragraph 28. Not seeing a hand. Paragraph 29.
Would that be the place to note that we're thinking about or would like to ask to change the logbook to reflect sand flea prevalence or impact?
Sorry, if you could say that again, where would the edit go?
Just basically saying, since we're already looking, I think we're looking at changing the logs anyway, add this to the logbook collection, the data that's collected in the logs.
Like a specific line item.
Yeah, it's a specific line item rather than just other.
Sorry, I'm just looking for very specific wording. So at the moment, we have fishing vessels to report such occurrences in logbooks given current something like that that's generic, or do you want something a little bit more specific?
May I add just on that? I just want to clarify again, if that was a change to the logbook, that was implying a mandatory data collection, that would have to go through additional channel that would require regulatory proposal for reporting of specifically, let's say, mortality related to released or discarded fish due to sand fleas. We could have that as a mandatory reporting component, but that would have to be requested through a regulatory proposal to the commission. We can have though some additional efforts through optional reporting of sand fleas in the logbooks that we can ask and encourage reporting through our field staff and compile that information more of an opportunistic basis. But if it was to be a mandatory reporting, that would have to be requested for regulatory proposal.
Well, let me ask, do you think it's worth the effort? Would that information be worthwhile?
So keep in mind that there's also a difference between, it would be a pretty significant undertaking to make it mandatory, just because this would have to be also then applicable to NOAA logbooks, that they would have to make these changes as well to make this uniform. It would be a pretty significant undertaking and would take probably some time in order to implement it across all logbooks that are currently approved for reporting Pacific halibut in the United States. In Canada, this is part of integrated groundfish logbook, and it is reported as a part of general reporting to the DFO. So they do have a column where they report released fish due to lice. And so that's already there. So again, it's a more significant effort than just making the change to IPHC logbook, and that's it.
But at the end of the day, that data would be better for us to have, or wouldn't do anything?
Well, if we had that data, certainly we could answer specific questions that we are having here, right?
Right.
To more accurately, if that was deemed that the data is reported comprehensively. Question is, there's always a little bit of a learning curve for the fleet to report the new information. We've seen that in whale depredation, for example. We do have that in the logbook. This is notoriously challenging field to get the comprehensive data on. This is often subject to that additional edits done through the field staff. We can have that as a part of the more of a captain interview. That's not a problem. But again, having it as a mandatory field in a logbook, that's a little bit more comprehensive change. Again, depending on how far you want to go with trying to get that understanding of the question.
So it's a cost benefit analysis. And I guess the question is it worth it? Do you think, does the commission think, does the scientists think it's worth going to that effort? And if it's not, I guess maybe by consensus, the board would say, yeah, okay, we get it. But if it is, if it's significant, if you could tell us, but we get the sense that you don't think it's going to be that significant, or that even scientific is be more subjective. I don't know how you, so there, is that what you want to know?
Yeah, just before we jump into that, Sean and then Jim.
I can speak to the US DFL book. When the column for the whales and the straightened hooks, that those two columns are added, I mean, things get pretty tiny at that point as far as writing in the logbooks. I think if you just left the ability to mark sand fleas under other, it should suffice. I know we're being pushed to go towards the electronic logbooks, but I just wanted to point that out. You have to wear like super good readers just to fill these out at this point.
I think I agree with Sean. I think I like the way it was already worded, I think, and just leave it at that. And we can make notes
there's I know I use a catch a processor log, and I've got a comment section there, and I'll make little notes in there. Just leave it alone. And then I also talk with my port samplers too. Have pretty good relationships there, and we talk about all kinds of things there. So.
And we can certainly, based on the more information being requested on a more of an optional basis, we can, based on that, analyze that data and provide additional feedback on what we see based on that data. And based on that, that might be a more of a background for getting any additional mandatory reporting based on that. So maybe just kind of as an immediate step, having encourage reporting on SAM fleets in the current log fields or nodes, if that's okay. And we can provide certainly when we'll have any data based on that available, provide any summaries or any reporting to the RAB based on that. And from that, we can take it from there, depending on whether we see any promising research avenues and importance of that data. We can take it from there if there's a need for something more like added as additional field in the logbook that is mandatory for reporting.
Yeah, I think the original wording pretty much covered the intent here, and we're seeing a lot more SAM fleas, and they're impacting a lot more of our fish, but it could be cyclitic too, you know, it could be gone next year or not as bad. So I think the original wording pretty much covered it.
Yeah, I'm seeing it. By the time we get it written up and done and documented, the SAM fleets are gone.
It's no longer syncing, so I'm going to have to disconnect. So I've already undone that in the master version, but it's still showing up there. So let me just stop sharing and then try again. There we go. Okay. Good. So that covers off on the commercial side of things for SAM fleas. And then paragraph 30 is just looking at the fish data we already have. Fish data we already have. Okay. Paragraph 31. Oops. Not seeing any hands. Paragraph 32. Okay. And paragraph 33 is going to take a little bit of reading. I hope this is not like the tabloid news we saw come out this week. So if you have any edits to any of that main paragraph 33 or sub ABC, just raise your hand. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
I don't know if that captures the ability for IPHC to use that fish for to gather data or collect data on that fish. That seems to be, we're wanting accountability, but can we also use that data?
So I'm going to look to the team, Bashar, and see if there's anything you could suggest that would cover that.
Can we, on B, maybe word that, instead of saying to be kept in the loop, that the IPHC be listed as an affected party? Might be more specific, in other words, make it more specific that we want to have standing in any penalties that may be applied or listed as an affected party, you know.
So right at the, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's already there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think when it's all said and done, the removals aren't going to amount to a whole lot. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think it's a good synopsis what you've written, and I think it shines a light on illegal activity as far as removals go. So yeah, I think it's a good deal as you have it written. There's not a lot that's going to come of this, I don't believe, unless, of course, yeah, I don't know. When they go in and seize all this stuff, there must be something there, but I think it's not so much that the removals aren't accounted for, it's just the way they're dealing with them after the fact.
Well, I think too, this is an opportunity for it to kind of create a precedence and a foot in the door for future violations so that, you know, if future violations are identified and penalized, that the IPHC is in the food chain of those penalties. Gives us kind of a segue into that in the future.
Great, thank you. Sean and then Basha, if you could help.
I mean, it just seems like a lost opportunity not to use the data. I mean, I understand the penalties and the accountability, but why not try and use that time to gather the data?
So I think I would appreciate just a clarification. When you mention data, you mean the catch levels and whether this catch was part of the catch accounting that a non-directed commercial catch that we report on, or did any biological data that would provide, or I just trying to understand.
I'm looking at probably biological data. You know, when we deliver fish, we have a port sampler. It's taking OGLIS and measuring and weighing, and why not use that same opportunity on that fish that was brought in illegally?
So just to clarify, we do not sample non-directed commercial catches. So any Pacific halibut that comes from the trawl, it's not sample at all. Any trawl biological data that we have is the data that is gathered during the trawl survey that we utilize. We do not have field staff available to sample boats that are not directly commercial Pacific halibut catcher boats.
So if you were to gather that data, does that skew your models? I mean, say you had a better understanding of sex ratios, or we're talking about females maturing earlier. I mean, is that going to skew your models? Is there something to be gained out of this?
So we do get some sampling that comes from the observer programs. It's generally just length frequencies, and then we use the sex ratio and weight length relationships from the trawl surveys of similar size fish to interpret that length sampling that comes from the bycatch sector. So I think in general, sampling in those sectors is kind of out of our scope. But there is definitely value in having data there, and we have worked with the observer programs as much as we can to try and maintain some level of sampling of the biology of halibut that are caught in a lot of these fisheries.
I think that we're just, right now, we just want to quantify it, right? When we find out there's a bunch and we start grabbing money or things like that, it just gets blurry right now. We just want to find out who's investigating this and quantify what it is. We can, we don't even know that. Never mind saying, and we want some of the money and we want biological samples and stuff like that. It's all that's good, but where is it? How much is it? Where is it going? That's my thought anyways.
I think this is already part of the paragraph, but we can certainly work with OLE to provide additional context for this specific incident and in general, how any an illegal catch coming as a part of the non-directed fleet is accounted for in the statistics that we receive on the trawl discards rates and other numbers that we received as a part of non-directed fisheries.
Okay, so it sounds like, I mean, we're going to try and gather some additional information, try and seek OLE's engagement, identify ourselves as an affected party, indicate that we would like to receive some of the penalties if it was to end up that way so that we could use it or subsidize the FIS. And then obviously reporting back to the annual meeting, whether it be the conference board, the RAB, or all of the above. We can try and, well, we will do that as a result of this. Does that work for everybody? And then we can take next steps. And if that means actually going and seeing if there's any additional information we can collect, biological information, bycatch rates, or anything else, we can do that as a next step, just so we don't maybe get too far down the track. Yeah, Bruce? No?
Well, Lando had some great comments on it, and he seemed to know quite a bit about it. They're grabbing computers, they're grabbing phones, they're going pretty deep into this thing. It would be great if we could, get something we could report back to at the meeting. And that's a pretty big deal. I mean, I didn't know anything about any of that. It'd be great to get some more information on it to report back.
Yeah. Okay. Should be able to do it. Yeah, Jim?
Yeah, that'll all come out over a period of time, but social media is really good about trying and crucifying you without anything to back it up. So it's, I don't know, myself personally, I'd rather let due process run its course and see where it's all at.
No, I would agree with that Jim's statement. It just seems to me like, people are innocent until proven guilty. It's just come out in the news, and I don't know what or how or if, we don't know what it even is yet. So I don't know that we should try to develop this idea too much when we don't know hardly anything, don't know hardly a thing.
Okay, great. I think the way it's phrased at the moment is yeah, I think it's confrontational enough, but at the same time, it's leaving the door open to gather and let's have further discussions down the track. Okay, paragraph 34. It's all about unguided removals. Yeah, Basha, go ahead.
So as I said, as a part of that, as I mentioned, I can provide what is already available to the Secretariat, and we can publish that on the IPHC website and distribute among the RAB members. But we'll we'll try to provide any additional details from contracting parties as a part of effort to specify those methods even more.
Okay. Don't see any hands. 35. And then the last request, 36. I think this was yours, Bruce, so we'll make sure that it's got what you want in there.
So just to be clear, this means that no matter how dire the science is, that we're going to have a limit to how much we're going to cut the fishery down. We're going to continue to over harvest potentially because we decide there's a certain floor that we could take economically. Is that what this is?
Yeah, it's very similar to that. And it's to just determine what are the effects and how much would we have to adjust before we hit the floor to make sure that we can maintain the stock once the floor is hit. So this would be done through simulation, and it's really just a way to explore, this is an idea. We can do this through simulation, and we can see the risks to the stock and to the fisheries, and then decide whether this is that we continue to investigate these types of management procedures. So we can add all sorts of things to it in the future, but I think this opens the door for that idea. And we can see without actually putting a risk onto the stock.
So, well, I'm not in favor of having I'm not in favor of not taking whatever measures need to be taken to ensure the future of the fishery, even if it cuts off all of my business. I mean, or part of my business. I recognize that if you fish for only halibut, I mean, that's a huge component of what you're doing to make a living. It's going to be more painful than for somebody like me, but I'm not personally in favor of saying that no matter what, we're going to catch this much halibut because we need the money. And other than what I'm trying to understand what you said, where we're going with this. And I'm just one person. I'm just saying that I'm personally not in favor of a floor because they they shut off the king crab fishery in Dutch Harbor, and because they wanted to have king crabs again. So am I missing something here?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that's where the last analysis has sort of ended up was there was concerns that this would have a high risk to the stock and the fisheries in the future, and it would eventually drive it to levels that wouldn't be sustainable at all. And then we'd have to take even further measures because we kept harvesting at it. And that was done really early in the MSE process. And so we could redo that analysis and come up with the same answer with the more current data, or learn about it, or, if the RAB wishes to tone this down a little bit, they may request that the MSAB consider this type of management procedure in the future. And then you put it on the MSAB to have that discussion about whether they would make a recommendation to move it forward. I'm just thinking at the last minute here, how to get this idea into the report without the RAB really saying, this is something we really want. The RAB say it was of interest to bring up this floor concept, and we request that the MSAB consider this further, something like that.
Yeah, there's a difference between studying an idea than, promoting it. So I'm not for promoting the idea, but studying the idea is, even though I'm kind of in the dark here, probably. And I'm not objecting to what the consensus of the group is either. I just want to understand what it is that we're ratifying.
Yeah, so one suggestion might be the RAB requested that the MSAB consider investigating.
Yeah, I think that's what I was suggesting too. I mean, I've seen this modeling before. I've been in pro fisheries where we did do that. And I think do the modeling for discussion coming up so that because it is going to come up. And when it does, then you can say, okay, well, we anticipated this conversation and here's the data and modeling to properly do the risk assessment of a decision like this. But not that's really what I was asking for sure.
Yeah, and instead of maybe putting it on the MSAB, maybe just something like the MSAB requested consideration of an investigation, something like that. Because this is a report going to the commission as well as seen by other bodies.
Okay, does that work? Okay. Anything missing from these requests for additional action that we discussed or? Because if not, we'll move on to the last couple of paragraphs. I think it's pretty comprehensive. Okay. Not seeing any hands. The only other business that we didn't cover was just confirming that you're content with this day-and-a-half format. I think you are. I think it's been very beneficial for the Secretariat to have you yesterday afternoon, then yesterday evening, and then also this morning to really flesh out some of those ideas that you expressed on the last day and then also thought of overnight. So are you content to continue to move forward with this day-and-a-half format, noting we were previously a single day?
Yeah, I think everybody is. The question that's come up is that if we had this meeting a day later during the week, we could attend Fish Expo this afternoon or this evening. Pardon? I know it doesn't exist right now, but if we started the meeting a day later, Wednesday, Thursday instead of Tuesday, Wednesday, then we could go to Fish Expo and go home. But so that's kind of something I would like to the commission to consider.
Yeah, and that, just to confirm, that's the goal. And that's what we tried to do with this meeting. Unfortunately, the Fish Expo organizers are not as organized as we are and really struggle to lock in dates early enough so that we can get reasonable travel. So that is the goal, and that's why you see it on the agenda like that. And then the Fish Expo said, well, we're going to move it and we'll do it here. Yeah. So the goal is to have it so that the idea is that you would have this meeting, have lunch, and then go to the Fish Expo. Obviously, we're a day earlier because they didn't get their act together, but that is the goal. Yeah.
Actually, I like this year's schedule a lot because I've got something tomorrow morning first thing, so at the expo, so on a panel, so I would have had to made a decision which way would I go. So I like this year's schedule a lot for me, and then coming in from out of town too. Seattle's not my favorite place to hang out at, but I'm just being
Don't know
frank.
the good places.
But yeah, no, I do like the half day. I think it's really helped. I know in the past it felt kind of rushed at times, I think at the end, and a little more relaxed this way. But anyway, my 2 bits.
Not seeing any objection to the day and a half, and we'll try and figure it out with you for the Fish Expo next year. What's the optimal timing? And we can do that early on, and then as soon as we know when the expo is, hopefully little bit earlier than they announced this year. Awesome. Okay, any other final edits before we consider paragraph 38 as the report adopted? Any last minute thoughts or edits? Not seeing any, then I think we can consider the report adopted. And thank you very much. It's been a particularly fruitful meeting, I think. Really enjoyed last night and also this morning's discussion. So Giuseppe, any final comments from you?
No, just our appreciation to the RAB members attending in person and both online for your participation, your input. This is a very important meeting for us, so we really appreciate your time.
Great. Well, with that, thank you very much. We'll consider the meeting closed. And Giuseppe does have a quick video to show you of the catch protection
Yeah,
study.
we also
So-
have lunch available for
Lunch.
those of you who want to stay here for lunch. And in the meantime, we're actually going to be showing a video that was collected. In fact, was a video compiled by one of our IPHC interns this summer, based on the catch protection study that was conducted on the Oracle this last May. So yeah, but please stick around if you have the time for it. Thanks.
Great. So thank you very much. We'll close the online meeting portal and we'll just bring this up in the room if possible. So Ken, I'll leave that to you and if we'll bring in lunch. So thank you everybody who's been listening online.